The 2016 election was stranger than fiction. What really stood out to me was what Republican candidates said about climate change.
Climate change is not science. It's religion.
We shouldn't be destroying our economy in order to chase some wild left-wing idea.
Global warming is not our biggest problem, folks. Believe me.
Now, I may not be a real politician, but I used to play one on TV. For 7 seasons on The West Wing, I played a fictional advisor to a fictional president, tackling the biggest issues of the day.
Name a scandal after that building.
In real life, I'm a political junkie, and the biggest political issue of our time is climate change. Now I'm back in Washington to try to convince some real-life Republicans to take action. And they need to. They haven't advanced a climate bill in Congress in 6 years.
Hi, this is Bradley Whitford. Would the senator be available today? I'm here in Washington to talk about climate change. Hello? Hello?
The freeway. There's nothing really free about it. I feel like I'm a prisoner in my car every time I leave my house. My mom was a drag racer. She taught me to love cars when they're moving. Driving used to be fun and exciting. Now it's just pollution-spewing vehicles, road rage, and a terrible time suck.
Oh.
Lately, I've been feeling increasingly guilty. The exhaust coming out of my tailpipe is part of the leading cause of climate change in our country. I have 2 little girls at home, and I worry about their future. So I'm on my way to meet someone I hear has bold ideas on how to stop this dangerous carbon pollution destroying our planet. If I can ever get out of this mess.
I've come to Washington to convince Republicans to switch their stance on climate change. But where do I even begin? Turns out there's actually training I can get on how to do this.
And so I want to do an exercise with you. I'm going to be the member of Congress first. I'm going to say the planet hasn't warmed, and you're going to say, well, you're ignoring the consensus of science, and then you'll give them the better answer the second time. So the question I have is why we should ruin the economy when the science isn't settled. I mean, if the science
Well, the science is settled, with all due respect. 97% of peer-reviewed science has consensus.
Well, the science is never settled. It's always being worked out, and you know, this is how you climate people are.
Let's say that 97 doctors come and say your child is sick. And we know what's wrong, and here's what you have to do about it. And 3 doctors go, maybe okay.
Yeah, but those people are paid to do research.
See, I think you're not only a bad congressman, but a bad father. I can feel how that may be satisfying to me on some sort of savage reptilian brainstem level, but it's not going to move the conversation forward.
Right. Is what you want from this a little bit of personal satisfaction where you can thump your chest and say, boy, I told them? Or do we want to get something done?
What is the best way to convince a skeptical Republican?
Conservatives see the world through purity, sanctity. You want to think about their worldview. And so market-driven, freedom.
Market-driven sounds like a good word.
Market-driven is a very, very good word. So I want to
Great. Now that I have my lines, it's time to try them out on 2 Republicans who have returned my calls. My first stop is with Representative Marcia Blackburn.
This is Bradley. He's here to see the Congresswoman.
She's the vice chair for the House Energy and Commerce Committee.
Appreciate the chance to talk to you.
Absolutely.
It would be a major coup if I could get her to back aggressive climate action.
Climate change is an issue that I've been concerned about. In terms of my children, I have 3 kids.
Sure.
Do you have concerns about climate change?
We all agree that we want clean air and clean water.
Right.
We want a healthy Earth. But when it comes to the issue of global warming, it's an unsettled science. And the jury is still out as to whether or not it is cyclical or whether it is generated by human beings. There are scientists on both sides of the
There's
argument.
scientists on both sides of the issue.
That's correct.
I have not bought into the hoopla around the global warming theory. Here's a professor from Sweden, and he has done years, decades of study, and found there's no rising of the sea level at all.
I'm just looking for common ground. Would you be open to a market-driven solution?
Certainly, we don't believe we should create controls and taxes to change our way of life.
The burden should not be on the United States.
We're going to lose our freedom.
And you can look at report after report and say, well, the Earth has not warmed. It has been cooling.
Sea level rising, you know?
Right.
I'm excited to meet one of the world's top climate scientists, Dr. Jeffrey Greenblatt.
Nice to meet you.
He's an expert in transportation.
What's all this? This is incredible.
Jeff believes we could be in store for the biggest automotive revolution since the car replaced the horse and buggy.
Let me start by showing you what the concept of an autonomous electric car is all about. So what you see on the screen right now is people in cars not driving. There's a guy talking on the phone. There's no steering wheel even in that one. This person's sleeping.
The future is very laid back.
The car is traveling in both directions through intersections.
I'm already nervous.
Well, don't worry. There are algorithms that control the motion so that it's safe. And they ride in an environment that is cheaper and less polluting. So here we have the person calling up on his cell phone. There's a car being charged by solar power in a fleet pod, and then it comes to the person, and he gets in and he's on his way.
This is unreal. If Jeff's right, almost no one would even need to own a car. We'll be ordering up self-driving electric cars from rideshares like Uber and Lyft. They'll be powered by the sun, and they'll communicate with each other, and there'll be less traffic and pollution.
How soon might we see some of this? You know, even if it's integrated with some human driving as well.
I think in the next few years.
Wow.
Because we need to reduce our global emissions to near zero by the middle of this century in order to avoid dangerous climate change impacts.
But Jeff's worried. We could head in the entirely wrong direction if we don't fully embrace electric cars in this new autonomous world.
So this is more of what a dystopia would look like.
Right. Gray.
Smoggy.
Smoggy.
We have gridlock. You see a lot of internal combustion engines on the road, more congested roadways with more pollution. So a key change that has to happen along with vehicle automation and ride sharing is the use of electric vehicles. Otherwise, we could easily find ourselves in this situation.
In Jeff's driverless, shared electric cartopia, we can slow climate change before it's too late. But are we headed in the right direction? First things first, I need to see if I can trust a car to drive itself.
I'm alarmed by what I heard back in Washington. 2 sitting congressmen denied the Earth is warming and the seas are rising, when the consensus of scientists clearly says the opposite. I've come to South Florida to see the evidence myself. With me are 2 scientists, Mike Berry and Michael Savarese, who have noticed dramatic changes here.
What's going on here? A little over 10 years ago, I started understanding that the rates of erosion were significant and related to sea level rise.
And what are the consequences if you lose all these barrier islands?
Called barrier islands for a reason.
Right.
You know, they're basically the barriers to storm energy. You take those islands away and all of a sudden the inner part of the coast becomes more vulnerable. So in my mind as a geologist, I view this as kind of a tipping point. All right, good luck, gentlemen.
Mike Berry walks me out to where the edge of the island used to be, less than 10 years ago.
Whoa.
To go back any further in time, we'd be well over our heads. By the end of the century, these islands will be gone. Barry and Severis then take me inland.
When the grass dies, the soil underneath dies, and it can't support vegetation at all. So in just a series of a few years, the elevation of the marsh has dropped to create this circular hole. And these circular holes are everywhere.
Could these continue to grow and expand?
That's my big worry. That's what keeps me up at night, is that the marsh disappears altogether and turns into open water.
Right. And again, the basic problem is the more open water you have, the less it can protect. Right.
Next, Barry takes me to another place where vegetation is dying. A ghost forest of black mangroves.
I mean, it looks like a dead zone here. Do you think this is the future?
It's just in the last 10 years, there's been a dramatic increase of these kind of die-offs in surrounding areas. And as the rate of sea level rise increases, some of the other mangroves are going to begin to die off like this.
If I represented this community in Washington and I was denying climate change, what would you say to me?
It's kind of ridiculous, actually.
Right.
There's no denying this. If we keep going the way we're going, it's going to be infinitely worse than just a dead zone in the mangroves.
It was really disheartening to see the gridlock in Washington. But now that I've seen what's happening with my own eyes, I am more determined than ever to win over some members of Congress. It's time to go back and try again.
After seeing those futuristic self-driving cars, I really want to try one out. Delphi Labs is a leader in this technology. Engineer Gary O'Brien and AV expert Annie Leon have agreed to let me in on a test drive, but I have to admit, I'm terrified of robots.
I have been learning about the possibility of an autonomous future and the impact it could have on the environment, which puts me here in an autonomous car, which is kind of crazy. It's actually more than kind of crazy. I'm a little nervous. Shall we go?
In the race to deliver the first self-driving cars, there have been some accidents. So, are they safe? Guess I'll find out. An engineer named Matt is required in case he suddenly has to take over, but for safety reasons, he's not supposed to talk.
Matt, where are you from originally? Oh, I've never been there. Your favorite baseball team's the Mets? Yes? This is weird. It's like we were meant to be buddies. I can make fire with my mind.
Delphi Drive available.
Now you're in automated mode.
Whoa, that happened?
Yes.
Wow.
So now we're in active mode. His feet are off the
He's
pedals.
not doing anything. So right now that the car is doing its modulating brake and steering for him. So it's 100% automated driving.
You're not doing this with your mind? So this is all just the car?
This is it. The car is driving itself using the computers in the vehicle to do that.
That's incredible.
This vehicle has 6 LiDARs and 10 radars, where it's actually looking around to see what obstacles are around us. Then it's using the cameras to look at the lines on the road to steer us.
So did it just read that light?
It did.
It read that it turned to green?
Yes. So, and it actually, now it's made a choice to make this turn.
Wow.
Nice smooth turn.
That's crazy. It's reading so many things at once. I mean, how is it processing all of that stuff at once?
These sensors can actually operate thousands of times faster than a human being can.
Ugh. Sorry, that freaked me out a little bit. I feel so naked.
I'm shocked at how far the technology's come. This car isn't fully autonomous. Matt still has to take over from time to time, but it's not far off. And Annie tells me AVs could prevent 30,000 traffic fatalities a year.
It is incredible how quickly you get used to this technology. Like, I just take it as completely for granted already. And I've taken you for granted, Matt. I'm sorry, buddy. I appreciate you. What's your favorite food? Peanut butter and jelly like me? I knew it. I knew it, Matt. Yeah. Boom. I got some great pictures of my recent trip. There's my daughter. She's super cute. Staring contest. Bring it over, Matt. Bring the eyes over. You win.
Wow, I can't believe how safe that felt. It looks like, when it comes to autonomous vehicles, we might be on track for utopia. I wonder what it'll take to get everyone on board.
My God, we're on the freeway.
I'm back in the Capitol to try to figure out a way to break the gridlock on climate. Luckily, I found a guy who can show me the ropes. Up until a decade ago, Jay Butero was a successful entrepreneur. But amazingly, he gave it all up to become a volunteer, lobbying Republicans on climate change. Nearly every week, Jay makes the trip from his home in Philadelphia down to Capitol Hill, where he's a key figure in Citizens Climate Lobby, or CCL. Today, many of the group's 42,000 members are in Washington, lobbying Congress to support the single most effective remedy to limit greenhouse gases, a bill that would put a price on carbon.
2017! Yeah! 2017! All right, excellent. Thank you.
Must be Jay.
Brad, good to see you.
How are you? Good to see you. What is it exactly you do?
I talked to Republican members of Congress about the issue of climate change.
Sure, you just a glutton for punishment, or what?
It has seemed like mission impossible at times, but we're making progress.
How many Republicans have you been able to flip?
So, first 9 years, none. And in the last year, we have 13 Republicans who've signed a resolution that says climate change is real and that Congress should act.
That's encouraging, but it doesn't seem like it's happening fast enough.
You're right. The clock is ticking. But if we don't get both parties together, we're cooked. Brad, welcome to my office.
This is where it happens, huh?
This is where some of it happens, yeah.
I don't mean to rain on the parade, but people are fed up. It seems to me that the Republican Party is the single biggest obstacle to taking action on climate change in this country and probably in the world.
But you're right. And many Republicans who have come forward on the issue will say our party has been the obstacle here, and they're trying to change that.
Right. So how do you decide who to talk to? What is your elevator pitch?
So I came up with a theory several years ago that it's going to start in Florida. The coastal districts in Florida are represented largely by Republican members of Congress. And so I started zeroing in on Congressman Carlos Curbelo.
Curbelo?
Yeah, the 26th district, which goes from Miami to Key West. Highly vulnerable district.
So did you have to work him over?
I wouldn't say we worked him over at all. But what we tried to do was show him that he would have the support of the mayors in his district and the county commissioners and from the voters.
So a lot of your work is providing cover. Because
Yes.
these guys have to run for office.
You call it cover, I call it political will. The day that he agreed to co-sponsor this resolution, I'll never forget it. You've heard the word climate hero. I think it applies to him.
I want to meet this guy.
Let's do it.
As a freshman Republican congressman, you've been incredibly brave talking about climate change and willing to work with people across the aisle.
It's kind of a shame that in today's politics, doing the right thing is considered courageous or brave, but I'll take it.
Okay.
What conservatives need to do is come up with an agenda. Up to now, we have just forfeited on this issue.
Right.
That has to change. We need to lead.
But there certainly are risks taking the stand that you've taken. What are the political risks for you?
If you're not taking risks in Congress, you're wasting your time and you're wasting the country's time. The longer we take to address this, the more painful it's going to be. How wonderful if Congress, for once, was proactive and not reactive.
Wow, a conservative Republican willing to show some backbone on climate. Why can't there be more Republicans like this guy?
Now that I've learned self-driving cars aren't that far off, what about ride-sharing? Are companies like Lyft and Uber going to be part of the solution?
How you doing?
All right.
What are the odds? You are John Zimmer, president of Lyft.
You got it.
Can you drive?
Yeah, I think I got this.
You don't sound very confident. We'll get in anyway.
All right. Where do you want to go?
Right here is great. This is as far as I'm going.
Nice.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm on a mission to learn about the future of cars, and I have 2 kids. I'm very concerned about their future and about carbon emissions. How much does Lyft think about that kind of stuff?
That was one of the original reasons why we wanted to do this. The environmental toll of having, just over 1 person in every car is just horrible.
How pie in the sky is a driverless city?
Yeah, it's very real. It's the only way we can double population in our world cities.
Right.
Imagine like this experience right now with no cars parked in a city, maybe half as many roads because the rides themselves are more efficient. The cost will come down to the point where you can get a ride anywhere for under $5. So it's like the ultimate form of public transportation door to door when you have autonomous. The economics work out that way.
It feels like one of those moments in history where we can either move forward in the right way or we can move forward in the wrong way because it's such a crucial turning point.
Mm-hmm. The ultimate outcome should be, clean fuel and should be autonomous and have the opportunity for people to share those autonomous rides. That is a big win, and electric is a big part of that. Welcome to Lyft.
Thank you.
Yeah.
John wants me to meet someone who's as passionate about autonomous and rideshare as he is. Anand Shah is here, telling Lyft employees how their company may look just a few years down the road.
Today, the only reason we often think that autonomy isn't going to exist is because we don't think people will accept that idea, that a robot is driving me around. In some ways, Lyft is that today. Push your Lyft button, a car shows up, and it takes you wherever you want to go. When you're done with it, it disappears.
But beyond autonomous and rideshare companies with huge fleets of these cars, Anand tells me the third critical component of a utopian roadway is electric. And he says I'll get it when I see it.
Those are beautiful.
They are some pretty good.
Hey, hello there.
We've come to a place called Pat's Garage.
We've been talking about autonomous vehicles all day, and if we're going to have an autonomous world, that it be electric vehicles.
So I can show you the difference right over here. If you come over and you look in this engine compartment, this is your traditional internal combustion engine compartment. It's full of hundreds, if not thousands of parts. It's extremely complex. It has oil, coolant, an exhaust system that can rust out. It has endless amounts of emissions equipment. It's what we're used to. All those parts.
Right, that looks like, to me, that looks normal.
Looks like a regular car.
Right.
So if you come over here, I'll show you the difference. Now this is essentially the whole thing. What you have here is 2 electric motors. You got a differential that changes the power out to the axles that drive the wheels. And you have a battery pack that supplies power to the motors.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow.
There's nothing under the hood of this car.
That is so crazy to me that that's what moves this car,
Yeah.
is that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I just assume is what is required.
Yeah, and I was raised in the Southern California car culture where I like to go fast.
Yeah.
Well, once again, there's no comparison.
This is so much faster.
This is so much faster.
So, putting this in the framework of an autonomous fleet, right? That's obviously going to just be a rational business decision. It has nothing to do with social consciousness. Which direction do you go?
Oh, electric. There's no comparison. This is so much more efficient. That requires endless amounts of maintenance costs. So as a fleet owner,
right,
you wouldn't want those maintenance costs.
Right.
And then you got the cost of fuel. Electricity is cheaper than petroleum, even as cheap as gas is today. This is the future. And it's the future now, because it's here.
Right. But I find that pretty amazing that you're saying that, because theoretically it's giving you less work. So I think that's pretty great, really.
I got involved in this process probably 10 years ago.
Right.
And it's fascinating. It is the future of transportation.
Wow.
Electric cars really are a superior technology that could save us money and help save the planet. Why aren't these cars everywhere? What's holding us back?
I want to know why there aren't more Republicans in Congress willing to come forward on climate. So I'm going to meet the GOP's most outspoken critic, Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse.
I am back to again urge my colleagues to wake up to the stark reality of climate change.
Nearly every week for the last 4 years, Whitehouse has taken to the Senate floor.
I am here today for now the 50th time, 64th, 73rd. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm never going to walk away from this issue. Today is my 103rd, 107th, 145th time. Hi. If this is uncomfortable for my colleagues, I apologize, but basically, I don't care.
Whitehouse pulls no punches when it comes to calling out Republicans.
They just as soon wash their hands of it.
For being the last remaining conservative party on Earth to deny the science of climate change.
It is time. It is well past time.
Like a lot of people, this situation drives me nuts that what should not be a partisan issue has become a partisan issue.
But it really isn't a partisan issue. You've got to look behind the partisanship and see who's pulling the strings. The truly evil story is what the fossil fuel industry is doing. They've taken power centers of the Republican Party and grabbed them all. And if they pull their support from a Republican candidate, that's a very serious threat.
Do you see any Republicans who want to do the right thing on this?
I would say 12 to 20 Republican senators would like to be involved in a serious piece of climate legislation and feel they can't. Talking to Republican senators about climate change is like talking to prisoners about escape. They look around, and the whole conversation is, how are we going to get safely over the fence or under the fence? Have you got a tunnel? These are people who've got essentially a political gun to their heads.
Right.
And they're being told, you do this, and it's a career ender.
Do you see any hope, any daylight there?
A lot. What I'm buoyed by is the conversations from Republican senators saying, I know I can't get there yet, but keep doing what you're doing.
What does it take to turn them?
Safe passage. Some form of safe passage.
I'm amazed by what Whitehouse is telling me. Despite the threat of the fossil fuel lobby, there may be enough Republican votes in the Senate to pass a climate bill. And over in the House is where Jay comes in. He's helping cobble a group together to come up with a climate bill Republicans can actually support.
Welcome to the first meeting of the Bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus, truly a historic meeting. There are a lot of people who believe that a group of Democrats and Republicans meeting together to work on climate change was impossible.
The first Republican to join, Congressman Curbelo.
Thank you very much, Congressman Deutsch, for being a willing partner. This could be a model for cooperation to really fill the leadership vacuum that I think many Americans perceive in our country.
This can shift from what has been a discussion around what are the costs of solving this problem to a discussion around, wow, the opportunities are enormous associated with solving this problem.
It's a good day for Jay. This meeting shows that maybe the two parties aren't that far apart.
We have been part of a historic discussion here today.
But before any bill can gain traction, Jay and Curbelo will need to recruit more caucus members.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Jay talks with a CCL colleague targeting one prospect in a state heavily dependent on coal, gas, and oil, a Republican congresswoman from Utah, Mia Love.
The progress you're making with the congresswoman is just spectacular. It's starting to remind me a lot of Florida. If she steps up, others will follow. All right, Tom. Well, thanks for the call.
Congresswoman Love is a staunch conservative and a rising star of the GOP. If she were to join the caucus, it could send a huge signal to the Republican Party.
We're not better off than we were 4 years ago, and no rhetoric, bumper sticker, or Hollywood campaign ad can change that.
Love has told the CCL she believes humans contribute to climate change. The question is, with her election looming, is she willing to take action?
Electric vehicles, or EVs, are only as clean as their power source, but even in states where they rely heavily on fossil fuels for electricity, they're still cleaner than most gasoline cars. Wow, EVs have been around since the 1800s. But the early electric cars just couldn't compete with the long range of gasoline cars. They all but disappeared until they made their first serious comeback in the 90s when General Motors introduced the all-electric EV1. Chelsea Sexton worked for GM back then, and she became a relentless champion of the EV1.
This is no golf cart. It does not putter along. It'll beat just about any car off the line. It's very convenient. You never have to go to a gas station again, which is a very big appeal to many people.
The oil lobby saw the EV1 as a major threat to profits, and GM decided the car would be a money loser. So they literally crushed it, and their entire EV program.
People keep making all these analogies about, crushing the EV is a betrayal of the American dream. It's not a dream. I mean, it's here now. It may be a betrayal of my dream, but it's a betrayal of the American reality.
Chelsea got laid off by GM, but she's dedicated her life to fighting for electric cars. In fact, she recently organized a National Drive Electric Week event here in LA.
Hey there.
Hey, Chelsea.
Ty.
Nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you.
Welcome to EV Land.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is incredibly cool.
It is very cool.
I didn't know that this existed, which I think makes me part of the problem.
Well, you're indicative of one of our challenges.
Yeah.
That we've been doing this for 5 years, this particular event, and very few people comparatively know about it.
Right.
So you came the perfect year. We have 20 different things to look at.
Man, there are so many cool EVs and even electric BMW and Tesla cop cars. Chelsea tells me here in California there's a mandate requiring car makers to sell zero-emission vehicles. But only 1% of new cars on the road in the US are EVs. Why?
So I'm curious about whether this is an inevitability that cars are going to go electric, or are you worried that, like before, this is going to start and then drop off again?
It's not inevitable yet.
It's not?
Yeah. We've had a few years of EVs. Everything looks really neat and rosy, and yet, if the California law changed tomorrow, these cars would all go away. We need the public to give them a shot. And then also, legislative, whether mandates or incentives, but the political support.
Where are we at with incentives?
We do have a federal tax credit that applies to everything with a plug to some degree. And then we have state-by-state incentives. One really popular example is Georgia. Had a $5,000 incentive for electric cars that just went away, mostly for political reasons, of one side not believing that EVs should be subsidized. I mean, the more we do this, the more we are going up against forces that are large. But let's face it, oil companies don't want to see electric cars happen.
California State Senator Kevin DeLeon recently lost a huge battle here for electric vehicles. His proposal to reduce petroleum use by 50% in California was swiftly knocked down by the Western States Petroleum Association, the same oil lobbyists who helped kill the electric car 20 years ago.
We had a slight setback a few days ago. It was very difficult to compete with the tens of millions of dollars that were spent by the fossil fuel industry. Everyone deserves the right to drive an electrical vehicle. And once we hit that tipping point, it's game over for the fossil fuel industry. It's game over.
So politics and the oil lobby are a big part of the problem. Is that what happened in Georgia? I'm on my way to find out.
After several months of laying the groundwork, the day has arrived. It's time to ask Utah Congresswoman Mia Love to join the Climate Solutions Caucus.
Congresswoman, how are you?
Hello, Jay. How are you?
Good to see you again.
But it's not going to be easy to bring her on board. So Jay invites someone Love knows and respects.
Hey, Mia Love, how are you?
Fellow Congressman Carlos Curbelo.
Congressman Curbelo, good to see you.
What I find really exciting is the fact that you are both freshmen, first term in Congress. You're both young parents. So I'm wondering how that affects your thought process on climate change.
When I think about climate change, I think about what kind of a world are we going to be leaving our children?
I refuse to be the generation that leaves this country worse off than what we had.
Are you feeling like we can address the problem and preserve the economy too?
I think we can, and I think one of the things that we're doing, and I applaud Carlos for, is opening up that door and starting to have that discussion.
What do you think the next steps are for the Congresswoman?
Well, Jay, I think it's colleagues like Mia that are gonna help us get this done, because she has a great attitude about this. There's a small but growing group of Republicans saying, let's have the conversation, let's see where it leads us. And then I hope at some point she can join us in the caucus, because I really think you have a lot to contribute.
So, Congresswoman, where do you go from here? What are next steps?
Well, I think where we go is continue to have the door open, but this is a conversation I'd like to have with energy producers, fossil fuels. Utah energy production is incredibly important, and it's just an issue that is, it's going to be a tougher issue to take on.
Right.
Jay thinks the political pressure on Mia Love was just too great for her to join the Climate Caucus.
So, how did your meeting go today?
We were hopeful that Congresswoman Love would step up, but I realized we have a long way to go. I thought we'd made a little more progress than that, actually.
So this is a rough day.
Yeah, this was not a good day.
You've been doing this for how long?
Almost 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
Nobody's covering your expenses.
No, I pay that.
Right.
Last year, I spent $40,000 in expenses and gave it pretty much all my time.
You're talking to people who don't want to talk to you day after day after day for a decade. And then you have these days like today. Doesn't this drive you out of your mind? I mean, how do you not crawl out of your skin?
I feel like the clock is ticking on this planet. I wouldn't feel right doing anything else.
So, this may be the wrong day to ask, but do you think you're going to be successful?
We will succeed. Congress will act on climate change. The big question is, will it be in time?
I'm told EVs were thriving here because of a generous tax credit, but then it was taken away? Chelsea's friend Don Francis has been fighting for EVs here in Georgia since the early 90s. Don helped install the EV chargers at this golf club. He's since retired, but is still a tireless EV advocate. I want to know what impact losing the incentive had. I was a little surprised to find that one of the experts in the field was in the South, and that there's a big presence in the South.
This is a question I get asked a lot. You know, why Georgia?
Yeah.
We were the #1 leaf market in the country.
How did that happen?
The incentives here in Georgia made the vehicles financially viable. With the removal of the tax credit by the state, sales have dropped 90%, and that's what we anticipated, and that's exactly what's been happening here.
And why did the incentive go away?
There are folks in the legislature, and particularly on the Republican side of the House, that think that tax credits are not the way to go to incentivize the industry.
Obviously, there's some ambiguity in this topic, because you can't just subsidize something completely forever.
We've used tax policy in this country for years to get people to do what you want them to do and penalize them for doing the things you don't want them to do. That's why there's a $1-something tax per pack on cigarettes. Why?
But should taxpayers be helping people buy EVs? Don thinks so. He says we've been subsidizing the oil industry in America to the tune of tens of billions of dollars a year. And Georgians could be saving with EVs instead of spending billions on fuel every year.
Electric vehicles generate revenue for the state because they don't use imported fuel. Georgia has no refineries, no oil wells, and that money primarily leaves the state of Georgia. You fuel an electric vehicle, now you're buying your fuel from a local company who's paying local taxes, employing local people. So we think it's a significant revenue impact for the state of Georgia.
I just don't get it. More electric cars on the road means more money going back into the local economy and less pollution. So what impact did killing the incentive actually have on local businesses?
The Leaf was our biggest seller by far. Up through June of last year, the Leaf was our largest volume car. We were the largest electric vehicle dealer in the world at one time. Sure.
Wow.
The last month of the tax credit, we sold 274 Leafs.
So what was that like going from that to
Well,
to
the
after
next
tax
month we
incentive?
sold 2 Leafs. So
Wow.
it was kind of like a huge hangover.
Yeah.
It does feel like people love the car, people respond to the car, people know that it's good for the environment, but that it might still need a little bit of a kickstart.
At the end of the day, it wasn't a free car after the $5,000 tax credit.
Yeah.
But it was a car that was very little outlay and very little risk for a customer.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was a great thing to do. In my opinion, it should have been repealed.
More gradually?
Exactly. Instead of just ripping the Band-Aid off,
Yeah.
I think we should have gone piecemeal.
I wonder how many more electric car converts there might have been if the incentive hadn't been killed like that. It's frustrating to see lawmakers getting in the way of solutions to our climate change problems.
The last time I attempted to lobby Republicans about acting on climate change, it didn't go very well. So I'm going to try again with a new congressman.
How's it feel? You feel ready?
No, I don't feel ready. I feel like I'm going into enemy territory.
I think you're ready. I mean, you've trained for this?
Congressman Lee Zeldin is an Army veteran who served in Iraq and has taken some pretty conservative positions.
This is a market-based solution to the problem of car alarm pollution. Fee and dividend, market-based solution, gradually rising fee on fossil fuels.
I don't want to disappoint Jay. Luckily, I'll have some help to make my case. I'm joined by several CCL members who live in Zeldin's district and have met with his staff 15 times before today, still with no result.
We really do appreciate what you're doing for the constituents of New York 1.
It's all part of the CCL strategy Jay told me about.
I'm very concerned about our farmers and storm surge.
Find common ground with your member of Congress and show them they'll have the political support to start solving this thing.
I'm Brad Whitford. I'm concerned about climate change, and I'm interested in talking to people who are not coming from the same place that I come from politically.
It's too bad you didn't solve it during your time in the West Wing.
Yeah, we solved the whole Middle East thing in 2 episodes.
The 1st Congressional District of New York is unique in that it's almost completely surrounded by water. We were greatly impacted by Superstorm Sandy, so the threat is very real for this congressional district.
I mean, do you think it would be helpful for us to emphasize, conservative, market-driven solutions? Would that help you?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there is more of an awareness and a willingness to recognize that climate change is real, and that Congress is more and more open-minded towards identifying those solutions.
So I'll throw our ask in here. So you're probably aware then about the Climate Solutions Caucus that has been formed. So the main thing we would request from you today is to perhaps consider joining the caucus.
There are times where things don't get done because of partisan fighting. But I love your approach. I like that you're bringing both parties together on it, that you're not trying to agree to the one solution before everyone comes together. So this sounds like something I would want to be a part of.
Great. Cool. We would appreciate that.
We did it. Zeldin is becoming the 9th Republican to join the caucus. I'm beginning to understand how Jay's patient, respectful approach might actually work.
So now you're into it, you've had meetings. I'd like to know, do you have hope? Do you think we can do this?
I am hopeful, strangely hopeful. I feel like it's one of those issues that seems like it'll never be solved, and then suddenly there will be great movement forward.
And see, if you ask me, I think we're near that point. There is enough happening in Congress that this could change rapidly.
What is it going to take?
It's going to take the American people. If they're not talking about the issue to Congress, it's not going to move. It's on you and me and everyone else in the country. The fate of the planet rests on the American people here.
I'm a Mets fan, so I tend to root for the underdog. I was psyched to see electric cars in Georgia so close to a win, until politics came into play and ruined everything. Maybe Chelsea can explain what's going on. She still consults for car companies, and she's been through this before.
Good to see
Hey,
you.
you too.
I heard you just got back from Atlanta.
I did. That's kind of why I'm here, actually. I had a little bit of a frustrating time. It was definitely not an optimistic trip.
Uh-oh.
They had just withdrawn the $5,000.
Yeah, everyone's very frustrated with that.
Yeah, and the sales are now plummeting.
That they've gone off a cliff, yeah.
What are the stakes this time around? You know, are we at a point where if things don't go our way, is this our last shot?
It could be.
Why?
Well, we're 6 years into this generation of plug-in cars, of electric cars.
Right.
We don't have that many more years to convince the public that this is worthwhile before they're going to kind of go, that was nice again. Let's move on to something else.
Going forward from right now, like what is the best case scenario for electric vehicles?
The best case scenario, at least in the next few years, is that we get a couple of big wins. And people are looking things like Chevrolet Bolt or Tesla Model 3 or second generation Leaf as sort of a more affordable, longer range, first quasi-mainstream vehicle that might be available.
We've been working on this issue for 20 some odd years, right? I mean, is there a part of you that looks at this like it's not going to happen, or do you need to be hopeful?
Well, I need to be hopeful because it's who I am and it keeps me going because this has been so long. And there are, really tangible stakes. I am from this little town and I started at 17 at the Saturn dealer around the corner, and this has been a very long time building.
I feel like I was always sort of interested in it, but the stakes go way up when you've got a kid.
Yep.
How much of an impact does this have if electric vehicles don't happen right now in terms of climate change and in terms of the world that our kids are going to see?
It has a huge impact. Transportation is a huge segment of the total carbon emissions of the world. I mean, EVs alone won't solve climate change, but even if we have them, we still have a lot more work to do.
Right.
Making electric cars work sets the stage for these other things, these other technologies that we know are coming.
I'm amazed after all these years that Chelsea keeps fighting. She still believes electric cars can win out despite all the obstacles. And it's clear to me now that we need to find a way to make that happen for the sake of our planet.
Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Jay Butera.
I give a lot of myself to Citizens Climate Lobby. But here's the thing. I get back more than I give. I get a chance to work with brilliant, inspired, unstoppable people like you. And that's what keeps me going. That's what gives me hope. And that's what's going to fix Congress and save this beautiful planet of ours.
That night, I go to see President Lincoln, who led the Republican Party and our divided nation to confront its most difficult challenge. I wonder what he would think of the Republicans I've seen taking on today's challenge of climate change. I think he might approve.
Maybe we are finally at a turning point. Chelsea is at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas to witness a moment she's been dreaming about for over 2 decades. Chelsea thinks the Bolt can be a game changer if GM really gets behind it this time. We have the tools to revolutionize the road. Electric is already here, autonomous is just around the corner, and rideshare companies are racing to lead the way. We need to drastically shift the way we travel to prevent the worst effects of climate change.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Bolt EV is truly the first EV that cracks the code of long range at an affordable price.
It means that we all have to be responsible consumers, including me. It's a daunting task, but one that feels worth it for my kids.
The way people get around is changing forever. The Bolt EV is the next step in this journey.
Chelsea's hopeful again, but still guarded. Hundreds of thousands of people are already clamoring for the latest EV models like Tesla Model 3 and the Bolt. They could be game changers, but only if Big Auto and the government really get behind them. Consumers still need convincing, and big oil won't give up without a fight. It may be a small step, but I know just where I can begin.
But I'm excited to drive it. Thanks a lot.
My first plug-in car.